going for this.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense would like to call Dana Haskins to the stand. May I proceed? Please state your name, spelling your last for the record.
My name is Dana Haskins, Haskins.
Ms. Haskins, what do you do for a living?
Let me tell you, I truly love my job. I'm a clinical psychologist with my own private family practice. I primarily work with families and delving into the deep dynamic family relationships that they have, and it truly lights up the way, even though it's bittersweet sometimes, the bonds that families share.
Now, Dr. Haskins, can you tell us about your educational background?
Of course, I proudly got my PhD in clinical psychology at Midland State University, go MSU. And I've also been board certified in my field for quite some time now.
Dr. Haskins, why are you here today in court?
I'm here today because I was retained to perform a psychological evaluation on Taylor Hobson to see if they fit the psychological profile of an intentional killer.
Did you review any facts and materials in today's case?
Yes, I performed and reviewed 3 psychological evaluations. This includes the Midlands MPI test, the CISB test, as well as the TAT test.
Were these facts and evidence sufficient into coming to your conclusion?
Yes, more than sufficient. It is the general consensus in my field that 3 tests are required. You see, while some psychologists may use 5 to 6, I find that 3 is perfect. It allows me to get all my tests done in a single day and to avoid prolonging testing that may trigger unnecessary traumas.
Dr. Haskins, did you employ a method in today's case?
Yes, I employed the RARE method.
Can you tell the members of the jury what the RARE method is?
Of course. The RARE method follows the 3 psychological evaluations that I stated earlier. First is R for report. This is my administration of the Midlands MPI test and my review of that. Then there's A for answer. This is in regards to the CISB test, which I administer and then meticulously score. Then is the second R for review. This is in regards to the TAT test, which I've also administered and analyzed. And then finally is E for evaluation. This is when I conduct a deep and comprehensive interview of the patient to gain more clarity and context on the answers that they gave within these 3 tests. And I also inquire deeply about their family and life history.
Dr. Haskins, did you reliably apply this method?
Yes, of course.
And is it standard in your field?
Not just standard, it is the gold standard in my field.
Well, then let's take this one step at a time. Let's talk about that first R that you mentioned. How was this portion of your method employed?
Yes, so the first R report that was employed in the Midlands MPI test that I gave to Taylor Hobson. This is a series of true or false questions that I use to gauge the psychological and emotional states of the patient.
Dr. Haskins, what were the results of this Midlands MPI test?
So with the Midlands MPI test, I'm looking for a total of 5 scales and their performance on these 5 scales. This includes aggressiveness, antisocial behavior, disconstraint, self-importance, as well as shyness. Now, when they score higher on some of these scales, this can predict violent behavior, which is something that would be seen in the profile of a psychological killer. However, because they did not score high on any of the scales that were concerning to a psychologist, I was able to rule that out with this test.
Dr. Haskins, was there any way in which Taylor Hobson could have manipulated the results of this Midlands MPI?
Yes, manipulation is a possibility within this test. However, I was able to rule out any and all indications of this.
Dr. Haskins, let's move on to the next portion of your method then, the CISB test. How is this portion of your method? It's A, I believe, right?
Yes, so A answer is applied in the CISB test. The CISB test is when I give the patient 20 fill-in-the-blank statements. For example, one can be I am a blank. And they fill in the blank regarding their own thoughts and feelings.
What were the results of this CISB test?
So once Taylor Hobson filled in all the blanks of the 20 statements, I then use a point system to score it. You see, now points that are accumulated to 70 and above indicate maladjustment from the patient. something seen in an intentional killer. 50 and below would be well adjustment, and falling anywhere between the range of 50 and 70 equates to neutrality. Taylor Hobson, once again, was in this neutral state.
Dr. Haskins, was there a possibility of Taylor Hobson manipulating the results of this test?
Yes, again, theoretically, as it is a test, cheating is possible. However, with this, I cannot imagine how. You see, it is up to the patients to fill in the answers as they see fit. However, it is my responsibility as a practitioner to score all their responses. You see, there are no right or wrong answers to these statements or questions. This is why I use the interview so that I can gain more context and clarity on why they answered the way that they did. However, this comes later in my method.
Now, Dr. Haskins, you said that you ruled out manipulation on the 2 previous tests. Can you tell us why?
Yes, you see, the Midlands Board of Psychology as well as myself, we take manipulation very seriously. This is why there are precautionary measures in place within these tests to make sure that we can rule them out. See, with the Midlands MPI test, Taylor Hobson self-reported to me unfamiliarity. They also did score slightly high on the scale of shyness. However, of the 5 traits that I mentioned, this is the one that is non-concerning for a psychologist. Also, they were given amounts of redundant questions, and their consistency to these answers allows us to also rule out any signs of manipulation.
Well, then let's move on to the 3rd portion of your method. It's that second R. Can you tell us how this portion was applied?
Yes, the second R, this is for report. With this section, I gave them the TAT test. The TAT test is when I select a number of scene cards, and these scene cards display images that are meant to invoke an emotion out of them. I asked Taylor Hobson to summarize the story that they got from these scene cards, and it's so that I can gauge how they feel internally to see if they see themselves as the hero or as the villain.
How many scene cards did you use for this TAT test?
Now, the TAT test makes available a total of 31 cards. Within my field, psychologists will use a subset of these cards, anywhere from 5 to 12. I personally chose to use 6.
Well, then what were the results of this TAT test?
Based off of the responses and the invoked emotions from Taylor Hobson, looking at these scene cards, they conveyed to me immense amounts of pressure from their father, frustration with their sibling, and overall strain within their familial relationships.
Oh, Dr. Haskins, let's move on to the next portion of your method, evaluation. Did you finish your evaluation at this point?
No. Following the 3 tests that I gave, I made sure to conduct an interview. This is so that I could gain a broader context and scope of all the answers that they have given me within those 3 psychological evaluations. You see, working with families, I have come to find that many times family members may say things in the heat of the moment. This is why I have learned to never take things from face value, always gain a broader reasoning and understanding of why they answered the way that they did. Also, I was aware of Taylor Hobson prior to this evaluation. However, my low level of familiarity with them made sure that I had no effect on their evaluation of them.
Well, Dr. Haskins, I want to talk a little bit about something you mentioned earlier. You said that Taylor Hobson kept scoring in a neutral range on the previous test. What does this tell you as a psychologist?
As a psychologist, this told me that Taylor Hobson was normal. You see, were they the most well-adjusted person? No, but I mean, who is? I'm definitely not. Nobody's perfect. There was no indications of being villainous neither. You see, overall, it told me that Taylor Hobson was just an average guy trying his best to deal with a difficult hand of cards that he's been dealt with.
Now, Dr. Haskins, let's move on to E, evaluation. What was your conclusion as a result of this psychological evaluation?
Based off of the evaluation that I performed, I could come to a conclusion with a certain degree of scientific certainty that Taylor Hobson does not fit the psychological profile of an intentional killer. You see, Taylor Hobson displayed to me no violence, behavior, aggression towards their father, as well as no ill intent within their behalf. Overall, I just saw signs of a strained and strained father-son relationship that I have seen within many of my patients. You see, now family dynamics are difficult. However, difficulty does not yield death. Just because a child, a son or a daughter is upset with their parents, their father, their mother, this does not make them a killer. And Taylor Hobson is no exception to this.
Now, Dr. Haskins, you're gonna have to just bear with me for one moment. Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm approaching opposing counsel and the witness in turn what has been previously admitted as Exhibit 3. Now, Dr. Haskins, why don't I just hand it to you?
This is a bottle of concentrated banana extract.
Have you ever seen that aboard the Mid-River Arena Express?
No.
Have you ever seen my client hold that bottle?
No.
Thank you, Dr. Haskins. Let the record reflect I'm retrieving the exhibit from the witness, and at this time, Your Honors, I have no further questions.
Councilwoman Rewright.
Good morning, Dr. Haskins. I'm just going to be asking you a few questions about your psychological evaluation of Taylor Hobson.
Okay, good morning.
Now, before you conducted that psychological evaluation, you saw Mr. Hobson wearing a medallion, isn't that right?
Yes, when he came in to perform the psychological evaluations, he was wearing a medallion.
And when you asked him about it, he said that it was back where it belonged. Isn't that right?
Yes, I do recall him saying something like that.
Now, additionally, before you conducted your examination, you asked him if he was familiar with any of the tests. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And you simply believed him when he told you that he didn't recognize any of them?
You see, I did take his self-report of unfamiliarity with the test into an account. However, I did not base my total ruling out of manipulation solely off of this. I made sure to also employ the measures of ruling out any indication of manipulation.
I'm going to direct you back to the question, yes or no. You did ask him and you simply believed him, isn't that right?
Not simply, but I did believe him.
Now, you understand as a psychologist that the reliability of these tests is significantly contingent upon the patient not recognizing those tests, isn't that right?
Yes, significantly, but not solely.
Now, you agree yourself that you can find the Midlands MPI and CISB tests on the internet, isn't that right?
That is true.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your process in conducting this psychological evaluation. You're in a bit of an unorthodox circumstance in which you recognize the person that you're conducting a psychological evaluation on before conducting it, isn't that right?
That is true.
And additionally, you only conducted 3 tests, isn't that right?
Yes, however, I made sure prior to conducting these tests and dealing with Taylor Hobson in a professional setting that I was cleared by the Midlands Board of Psychology.
But most psychologists conduct 5 tests, isn't that right?
That's true.
Let's talk a little bit about some of those results. Let's start with the Midlands MPI test. Now, for one of those questions, Taylor Hobson responded true to it being better to keep his mouth shut when he was in trouble. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Now, in a separate answer, he said that it was true that he believed his father was a good man. Isn't that right?
Yes, however, as I said, I did not take any of the responses to face value, so I made sure to follow up on these within my interview.
Well, that's right. When you asked in the interview, he didn't say it. He said that he resented his father. Isn't that right?
Yes, there were signs of resentment. However, as a psychologist, we do make it aware that you can see someone as a good person, but in different contexts have different lights upon them.
Let's move on to that next test, the CISB test. Now, you as a psychologist, you have a heavy level of discretion over the judgment of the scores of that test. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And even so, Mr. Hobson was just 1 point away from being considered maladjusted. Isn't that right?
Yes, he did not even meet the bare minimum of the bar for being maladjusted.
But he scored a score of 69 and 70 was maladjusted. Isn't that right?
The bare minimum, yes.
Let's move on to that last test you conducted, the TAT test. Now, as a psychologist, you choose the cards that Mr. Hobson tells the stories of. Isn't that right?
That's true, meticulously to invoke an emotion out of them.
Now, let's talk about some of those responses that Mr. Hobson elicited with those cards. Now, for card B, is it true that Mr. Hobson said that the person had just done something terrible, something that they could never take back?
Yes, and we find that most of the time the responses that they give to such a question can often evoke an internalized insecurity within themselves, not outwardly towards others.
But with this card, you said that this statement indicates a feeling of aggression, isn't that right?
Yes, a feeling of aggression within themselves, not outwardly towards another person.
But aggression is a sign of an intentional killer, isn't that right?
Yes, however, they did not score high within this of the MPI test, so it was able to be ruled out.
Let's move on to another card. For card E, is it true that Mr. Hobson said the person was caught red-handed and justice had been served?
Yes.
Now, for the TAT test, you also admit that the reliability of this test is difficult to evaluate, isn't that right?
The reliability of this test has been difficult to evaluate. However, it has become very heavily used upon in my field to be applied to crime suspects as well as personality disorders, which is why it continues to be used.
And Mr. Hobson refused to be recorded during the TAT test, isn't that right?
Yes, you see, recording is asked upon on all the patients. However, it is not a requirement, and we understand that recording may not be wanted by the patient because it is a very sensitive area when they are filling out these tests.
But most patients do consent to being recorded, isn't that right?
Most do, but it is not a requirement.
Let's move on to your time on the Mid-Riverina Express. Now, on the 24th of April, you saw Mr. Hobson wearing an orange hoodie, isn't that right?
Yes, slightly.
Now, let's talk about that day that Mr. Bancroft was found dead. When Mr. Hobson walked into that room and he saw that dead body, he uttered the words, "I wish I could take it back." Isn't that right?
Yes, and upon my interview, I found out that this was in regards to taking back certain statements that he had said when his father was alive.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. I simply ask that my witness be excused from the stand.
Thank you, you're excused. You can call your next witness now.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Alex Silva to the stand.
Whenever you're ready.
Please state your name, spelling your last for the record.
Good morning. My name is Alex Silva, S-I-L-V-A.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Silva?
Well, right now I'm the commissioner for Midland Parks Recreation. I'm the commissioner for Midland Parks Recreations and Services. And I was a firefighter for 10 years as well as an EMT before that.
But how are you related to today's case, Mr. Silva?
Well, I'm related to it because I was one of the passengers on the Mid-Riverina Express. And I was one of the two people helping to resuscitate Avery Bancroft.
And how did that train ride go for you?
Well, it was hectic to say the least.
What day did you board the train?
Oh, I boarded the train on April 22nd of 2024.
And now I want to talk about the day after, April 23rd. How'd that day go for you?
Well, I slept in that day because I was a little tired, and then later on in the day, I went on a museum tour.
And how'd that museum tour go?
Well, the museum tour was kind of a little boring, so I struck up a conversation with Ashley and Bailey Connell.
And how did that conversation go?
Well, it was very interesting, and I kind of got confused at one point whenever Bailey told me I was asking them why they were here, and Bailey kind of told me, we're here to end the lawsuit once and for all.
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Yes, Your Honor. This falls under hearsay exception 8033, then existing mental, emotional, or physical condition involving a motive, intent, and plan. This goes to Bailey Connell's intent to end the lawsuit once and for all, as stated.
Response?
Your Honor, firstly, the lawsuit being referred to isn't in fact Bailey Connell's. Any statement of Bailey Connell's intent regarding something should be discarded. Additionally, I fail to see how stopping the lawsuit once and for all is a statement of a plan or intent, as there is no detail given in regards to the statement of how they intend to do it.
If I may respond on those grounds, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Just because it's not the personal lawsuit of Bailey Connell doesn't mean that she can't have a motive, intent, or plan, and therefore that doesn't mean that her statements can just be disregarded.
The objection's overruled.
Yes, Your Honor. Did you get a chance to finish your answer, Mr. Silva?
No, I can finish it. Anyway, I was talking with Bailey and they were mentioning, yeah, we're here to end the lawsuit once and for all.
Do you know what Bailey meant by this?
No, I don't really know what Bailey was talking about, but I did know there was a lawsuit with Ashley Colonel and Avery Bancroft, though.
And how did you know about that lawsuit?
Oh, I kind of keep up with lawsuits with Avery Bancroft, and I found this one online.
Would you recognize it if I showed you it today?
Yes, I would.
Let the record reflect, I'm now approaching the witness with what has already been entered into evidence as Exhibit 23. What have I just handed you, Mr. Silva?
You just handed me a lawsuit between Bancroft Estates and Avery Bancroft versus Ashley Colonel, Tristan Cross, and Lonnie Cross.
And how much is the plaintiff, Mr. Avery Bancroft, suing for in this case?
1 second. Let's see. Oh, Mr. Bancroft is suing for $1 billion, which is an insane amount, I will add.
Let the record reflect, I'm now retrieving it from the witness, republishing it to the jury. So, Mr. Silva, how did the rest of that train ride go?
Well, the train ride was, I wasn't doing much until April 25th on the morning, since Avery Bancroft died, and I rushed out to try and help resuscitate him with Dr. Edmond.
And how did that morning go for you?
Me and Dr. Edmond failed to resuscitate and save Avery Bancroft, and he later died 30 minutes after we performed CPR.
Sorry to hear that, Mr. Silva. Now I want to move on to something that you may or may not have seen on the train. Let the record reflect, I'm now approaching the witness with what has already been entered into evidence as Exhibit 40A.
Thank you.
What did I just hand you?
You just handed me a concentrated banana extract. It's got a little banana on it too.
Have you ever seen that bottle anywhere?
No, not really. I don't even remember seeing it.
Have you ever seen it on the train?
Nope.
Have you ever seen it with my client, Mr. Taylor Hobson?
Not that I can recall, no.
Let the record reflect, I'm now retrieving the exhibit from the witness, republishing it to the jury. No further questions, Mr. Silva.
Yes, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Silva. My
Good
name is
morning.
Messin Tajani. I'm just here to ask you a few questions about your time on MRE.
Okay.
I want to start on the day of April 23rd. Now, that day you observed Taylor Hobson and Kelly Deuce having a conversation, is that right?
Yes.
And in that conversation, Kelly Deuce talked about how nice it would be to have family money. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, to Rule 801 hearsay.
Response, Your Honor? This statement's being used to show an effect on the listener, if I may proffer. The next question will be in regards to Taylor Hobson's reaction. You'll find that Taylor Hobson, after hearing that statement from Kelly Deuce, elbows Kelly Deuce and gives her a glance disapprovingly.
With that exception, Your Honor, we'd like to offer a limiting instruction to the jury saying that's not being used for the truth of the matter.
Objection overruled. You continue.
Now, I'll re-ask my question. When you were overhearing Taylor and Kelly's conversation, you heard Kelly Deuce talk about how great it would be to have family money. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
And to that, Taylor Hobson elbowed Kelly Deuce.
Well, I mean, it was a rude thing to ask, I will say. You don't ask for your family's money, but yes, he did.
And Taylor also shot Kelly Deuce a disapproving glance. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
Now I want to continue on April 23rd. That day, you went on an excursion. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
You went to the South Australian Museum.
Very culturally intriguing, but very boring.
And Avery Bancroft joined you on that. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I saw him on that.
And when you were with Avery Bancroft in the museum, he was talking about changing who gets his business after he dies. Is that right?
Yeah, he was talking with our tour guide, I think, about some legal stuff. I've become a firefighter, not a lawyer. I'm not interested in that. Alright.
Now I want to move on to your time on April 25th. You were there at the scene of Avery Bancroft's dead body. Is that right?
Oh yes, I was with Dr. Edmond.
You were attempting to resuscitate him.
Yes, I was.
And after that, Dr. Edmond concluded that it was poison that killed Avery Bancroft. Is that right?
I believe so. That's what Dr. E said.
Now, after you and Dr. Hillary Edmond were at the body of Bancroft, tragically passed away, you walked out of that room, is that right?
Yes.
And you saw Taylor Hobson standing outside of that room, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
And Taylor Hobson was holding something in her hands, or his hands, apologies. Is that true?
Oh, yeah, he was.
And would you recognize what he was holding in his hands if brought in front of you today?
I believe so.
Let the record reflect, I'm approaching the witness, what has been marked as Exhibit 34A.
Thank you.
These are exactly what you saw in Taylor Hobson's hands that day, is that right?
Oh, yeah, because I found it intriguing that there's no lens. I figured, that he actually sat on it.
Correct. There's no lens in those sunglasses, is that right?
No, there isn't.
Alright, you can set that aside for now. Now, the last few questions I want to ask have to do with this bottle of banana extract. Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with Exhibit 48.
Thank you.
Now, as you said previously, Dr. Edmond concluded that was poison that killed Avery Bancroft, is that right?
Yes.
And just to be clear, you didn't see Ashley Connell on the MRE holding that bottle of banana extract ever, is that right?
No.
And nor did you see Harley Kim holding that bottle, is that true?
Nope.
No further questions, Your Honor. Permission to retrieve the exhibits.
That's fine, go ahead.
Here you go.
Redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. All I ask is that my witness be allowed to step down.
Thank you, yours, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Depends whenever you're ready for your next witness.
The defense calls Taylor Hobson.
Could you please state your name, spelling your last for the record?
Good morning. My name is Taylor Hobson. That's spelled Hopson.
What do you do for a living, sir?
I'm currently the interim CEO of Bancroft Estates. My passion is with nonprofit work. Currently, I'm on the board for Habitat for Humanity and other ecological nonprofits.
You mentioned that you're the interim CEO of the Bancroft Estates. For how long have you been there?
Since May of this year, after the passing of my father.
I want to talk about your father's passing, sir. Were you here when the plaintiff made their opening statements today?
I was sitting right there.
Were you here when they accused you of killing your father?
I heard that.
Well, can you tell the members of the jury about your relationship with your father then?
I'll be honest, it wasn't a good one. See, he left my mother before I was even born, went and cheated on her with some other woman. Then when my mom got diagnosed with cancer, he refused to pay for her treatments. So yeah, I didn't have a good relationship with my father.
Sir, would you say the world is a better place now that your father's gone?
It's an awful thing to say, but yes.
So you're telling the members of this jury that you didn't like your father and you think the world is a better place now that he's gone. But sir, did you kill him?
No, of course not. Like it or not, he was family. My father and Shannon were the only family I had left.
You mentioned that Shannon. Who is that?
Shannon's my half-sister. Same father, different mother.
Before your father's death, did you ever see the plaintiff?
I did. At a family dinner, my father invited us. It was myself, my girlfriend Kelly, Shannon, and Shannon's girlfriend, Ashley Connell.
Can you tell us what happened at that family dinner?
Immediately once my father saw Ashley Connell, he kicked her out of his house. He said he was planning on sending her litigation.
Well, after your father said he was going to sue Miss Connell, what happened?
Shannon got upset. She stood up and said, "Spare the invite next time. The only event I'll go to is your funeral."
Well, did your father have anything to say about that?
Yeah, he just chuckled and said, "Don't worry, you'll pay for your choices."
Sir, after your father told the plaintiff that they would pay for their choices, what happened?
Shannon left. It was just my father, Kelly, and me.
Well, then I want to talk about the Mid-River Arena Express itself. We heard today that you boarded that train on April 27th. Was that true?
Yes,
And let's talk about that day then. What can you tell the members of this jury about April 22nd?
I saw my father was on the train. So I went up to him to have a conversation. It was my first time seeing him since that welcome dinner. I wanted to ask him if he cut Shannon out of the will, because that's what he made it seem like he was going to do at the welcome dinner.
Did your father end up cutting the plaintiff out of his will?
No, he always put Shannon on such a pedestal. I remember shaking my head walking away saying, I guess people don't pay for their choices.
Well, let's talk about that next day then, April 23rd. What can you tell us about that?
It was shocking. I saw someone else on the train. It was Ashley Connell. I had no idea what they were doing there, especially with my father being there.
And what did Miss Connell do?
She asked me if I could buy her a bottle of potassium when I go to shopping in this place called.
Objection to hearsay, Your Honor?
Your Honor, this question actually has no truth value in and of itself. Can I have a bottle of potassium? Has no truth value itself, and we're also using it for subsequent action. We're going to learn that Mr. Hobson said no, and they went after somebody else.
Your Honor, if I may respond. I agree that normally questions do not hold truth value to them. However, this specific question does hold truth value, saying that Ashley Connell in fact wanted Taylor Hobson to buy potassium for her.
Yeah, the objections.
I want to talk about April 23rd before you went on that shopping trip. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah. I saw Ashley Connell and me have a conversation where she said she was planning on buying some potassium but couldn't because she had to go to the museum instead. I said I couldn't buy her anything, so Ashley said I'll just ask one of my other friends.
Did Miss Connell ask somebody else?
Yeah, she went up to this individual named Harley Kim.
Well, let's talk about what actually happened on that shopping trip then. Where did you go?
I went to this place called Pandorf, and it was very strange. This Harley Kim passenger on the train was following me all around, taking pictures of my every move.
Well, were you able to get away from Miss Kim?
Yeah. I was able to get away at this store called Cher's Tools and Crafts. I went out the side entrance to get away from all of the photography.
And where did you go after you left Cher's Tools and Crafts?
I went to that store called Australian Outback, because we were in Australia. I bought sunglasses and sunscreen. And then went to the next store over as a jewelry store, where I bought an engagement ring for my girlfriend. I plan on proposing to her on April 25th.
I want to be clear about something, sir. Did you buy anything in Cher's Tools and Crafts?
No, I didn't.
And after that shopping trip had ended, what happened?
I went back on the train. I went to talk to my father again, but he wasn't in his cabin. Instead, Harley Kim was there,
Do you know what Miss Kim was doing in your father's cabin?
and I had no idea.
Well, let's talk about the next day, April 24th. What can you tell us about that day?
I saw this Harley Kim person again, except in my cabin, completely uninvited. Harley Kim looked shocked to see me. She dropped what she was holding.
What was Miss Kim holding in your cabin?
An orange hoodie that I saw was being sold at the Australian Outback place, and out of that hoodie was this bottle that rolled out.
I'm approaching the witness with Exhibit 40. Sir, is that the bottle that Miss Kim dropped in your cabin?
Yes,
And once that bottle was dropped into your cabin, what did you do?
told Harley to take her stuff and get out of my cabin.
Well, did she?
Yeah, she exited my cabin and turned left and went into the cabin right next to mine.
Sir, do you know who was staying in the cabin directly left of yours?
Ashley Connell.
Did you ever see Miss Kim leave Ashley Connell's cabin?
No.
I'll take that back from you, sir. Let's talk about April 25th, the day that your father passed away. How did that day begin?
I was sleeping when I woke up to these loud knocks on the door. One of the passengers said I had to see my father immediately. So I immediately went inside and I saw he was lying unconscious on the floor. administering CPR, but after 30 minutes, it was no use, and my father passed away.
Once your father passed away, can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, I saw Ashley Connell there. She got a phone call and then left the room. Afterwards, I went back to my own cabin to process everything that happened, and I got a call from Shannon.
Did the plaintiff say anything to you on that phone call?
Yes. She said she just heard from Ashley that my father passed away, and that she wanted to go 50-50 on the inheritance.
Objection to hearsay, Your Honor?
Your Honor, under Rule 801 D2A, these are statements made by the defense's party opponent in today's case, the plaintiff Shannon Sheed.
I withdraw my objection.
Thank you.
Sir, after you heard that phone call from the plaintiff where they asked you to go 50-50 on that inheritance, what did you say?
Said, never call me again. And I hung up.
Well, let's talk about what happened after your father's death. Did you ever see the plaintiff after that point?
Yeah, at my father's funeral.
What can you tell us about your father's funeral?
I saw Shannon there with Ashley. The two of them were talking the whole time. And at one point, I saw them giggling. So I went up to them and told them, knock it off.
What happened after you told the plaintiff and Miss Connell to knock off their giggling?
Shannon ushered me aside and pointed at another person. That guy handed me a stack of papers. It was this lawsuit.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Counsel, whenever you're ready for us.
Mr. Halson, growing up, it was just me.
Yes,
You didn't talk to your father, either Bancroft.
no, very little interactions with him growing up.
You didn't talk to him.
Yes, until around like age 15.
You didn't reach out to him at all, actually.
No, not when I was a kid. Not until my mom got diagnosed with cancer.
And when she was diagnosed with cancer, you needed money for her treatment.
Yeah, I needed money to pay for her treatments, and he refused to answer my calls.
Right, as soon as you needed money, that's when you reached out to your Bancroft, right?
Money to pay for my mom's cancer treatments.
But he didn't respond to you.
That's right.
In fact, you hated him because he didn't respond to you.
Absolutely.
And later, when your mother, she passed away, you blamed him for her death.
Yeah, if he paid for the treatments, she might be alive today.
So you think your father was the reason your mother is dead?
A reason. Cancer was a bigger reason.
When your mother did pass away, before your mother had passed away, she had covered all your expenses, right?
Yeah, I was just a kid.
But after, you needed money, right?
That's right.
You didn't have a source of income.
That's right.
So once again, when you needed money, you reached out to Avery Bancroft.
I did, and he offered me a job.
A job you weren't paid for though, right?
I got a $50,000 a month stipend. It was very generous. I was happy I was finally getting money.
Right, he started giving you $50,000 each and every month.
That's right, but Avery had the money.
But, Mr. Hobson, this money, it didn't go to your debt.
Yes, it did.
All of this money, it didn't go to your debt.
I paid off my student loans. That's why
All
it's
of the
majority
money
for.
went to your debt?
Not all the money. I didn't have all that money in debt, but I paid off my student debt using that money.
This money, none of it was saved, was it?
No.
Instead, you spent it on a private chef.
I did.
You spent it on 5 different cars,
That's right. It's very expensive to have a girlfriend. They're mostly for women.
a Porsche,
That's
a
right.
Mercedes,
That's right.
2 Ferraris.
That's right.
Mr. Hobson, you spend $10,000 each and every month on wine alone, isn't that right?
That's right, although the wine is for my fundraisers, for my nonprofit work, but that's correct.
But then, all of a sudden, Avery Bancroft, he stopped sending you this money.
He did.
But this didn't stop you from spending $50,000 each and every month, did it?
I wasn't spending $50,000 a month after he stopped sending money.
But you kept up your luxurious habits that before you were spending the $50,000 every month.
I kept spending money, if that's what you're asking, yes. I had expenses to pay.
You kept up your luxurious habits, isn't that right?
If you want to call them that, sure.
Well, Mr. Hobson, you called them that, isn't that right?
Sure.
So you did continue to spend $50,000, the same $50,000 that you would spend on those luxurious habits before, each and every month.
No.
Is it your sworn testimony today you didn't continue to spend that money on your luxurious habits?
I kept up spending money, but instead I was able to, my father sent me a bunch of different houses. He wanted to lower his tax burden.
I'm sorry, that
I
was not
able
the
to
question,
sell-
Mr.
I'm
Hobson.
listening. He was able to sell off the house with $3 million worth. I used that money instead.
But Mr. Hobson, I'm asking if you continued to spend the $50,000 that you would spend on your luxurious habits each and every month.
Your Honor, asked and answered. We've been through this line of question like 3 times now.
Your Honor, if I may, the defendant has refused to respond to my question and instead started talking about mortgages, which is not what the question is referring to.
Well, maybe we should break down what these luxurious habits are and whether or not we're actually spending money on them. The objection sustained.
Yes, Your Honor.
Earlier, you said you hired a private chef,
That's right. I kept paying for him.
and earlier, you said you spent $10,000 each and every month alone.
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm bringing up the questions as you had just said that I did not lay foundation to the luxurious habits that he was spending. And earlier, he also testified he did not save any of the money, which means that and as he said, he kept spending money on the luxurious habits. I'm clarifying that this was the $50,000 he continued to spend after he was cut off from his father.
So I think my comment was you can talk to him about what he continued to spend money on with these luxurious habits. We've already established what he was spending the money on prior to being cut off. Let's establish what he was spending the money on after he was cut off.
After you were cut off, you continued to pay your private chef.
Yes.
After you were cut off, you continued to spend $10,000 each and every month alone on wine.
For my fundraisers.
So you continued to spend the $50,000 each and every month on your luxurious habits.
I don't think it added up to $50,000 a month afterwards.
But as you said before, you didn't have a source of income
Well, at what point?
after your father cut you off. You didn't have an income besides your father.
That's right. After my father cut me off, I didn't have any.
You didn't get a job to try and pay for these expenses.
No, I was too busy with my nonprofit work. Instead, I sold off my father's houses that he gave me that were worth millions and millions.
But you also took out loans, isn't that right?
That's right.
You took out loans to pay for your luxurious habits.
To pay for my expenses.
Right. You didn't know when or if Avery Bancroft was going to send you money again.
That's right.
What you did know, Mr. Hobson, is that you were set to inherit 95% of Avery Bancroft's estate.
Yes, I knew I would get 95% and my sister Shannon would get 5%.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to read out Stipulation 22, which states that at the day of Avery Bancroft's death, his estate was worth approximately $404 million. So, Mr. Hobson, if your father was dead, you knew you would get 95% of $404 million.
And that's what I would receive in the world, yes.
I want to talk about the MRE now. You booked your ticket after Kirby Doolittle. Sorry, let me rephrase. Kirby Doolittle told you your father was going to be on the train from April 22nd to April 25th. Your Honor, if I may. The statement that Avery Bancroft would be on the trip from April 22nd to April 25th, this is a statement we already know to be true. Furthermore, I'm not actually using it for the truth value of the statement, but rather the effect on the listener. If I may proffer, you you will hear that Taylor Hobson booked their ticket after finding out this information.
Your Honor, whether or not it's a stipulated fact, whether or not this witness heard this from somebody else, it's still hearsay. As it's this person who's trying to tell this fact to them, we don't know if that's part of the stipulation or not. All we know is that this person made a statement. They're asserting with a truth value, this person will be at this place at this time.
Your Honor, if I may.
The objection's overruled, you can continue.
I'm gonna ask you again. Kirby Doolittle, your father's assistant, told you that he would be on that train from April 22nd to April 25th.
That's right, I reached out to her first.
Yeah, and after you heard that, that's when you booked your ticket, right, Mr. Hobson?
A couple weeks later, that's right.
I'd like to talk to you about the April 23rd. You went shopping in Hanover?
I did.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 31. I believe you already have a copy. Now, again, you went shopping in Hanover, right?
I did.
Not your sister, Shannon Sheed.
No.
Not Ashley Connell.
No, I don't remember seeing Ashley on, Hanover.
But you did, right?
That's true.
You went into Cher's Tool and Craft.
I did, to get away from Harley Kim following me up.
And this receipt right here is from Cher's Tool and Craft in Handorf, Australia, right?
That's right.
And this receipt, it was made in cash.
Where does it say that? Yes, yes.
When you made purchases in Handorf, you made them in cash.
Yes, I did.
On this receipt, you see sunblock,
That's right, it says SPF 85 sunblock.
and
with
you
bonds.
yourself bought sunblock.
Oh, well, I only buy SPF 100 sunblock.
But
My skin's very sensitive.
you bought sunblock in Handorf, yes?
I did at the Australian Outback store, which was right next door.
On this receipt, it says sunglasses,
And it says regular sunglasses. Yeah.
and you yourself bought sunglasses,
I bought Ray-Bans.
but you bought sunglasses, right?
They were more than $10, but yes.
And on this receipt, right at the bottom, it says 1857 or 657. Isn't that right?
That's right.
And you yourself, you made your purchases between 6:30 and 7 p.m.
That's right. I believe I was at the jewelry store at this time.
Mr. Hobson, you would do anything to make the world a better place. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
And now that your father, Avery Bancroft, is dead, you do believe the world is a better place.
Yep.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor, we only submit the speech.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, the defense rests its case in chief.
Thank you. Do the parties need a break before closing arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right,
We have 47 minutes till all logs.
okay. How much time do you guys want?
10?
That's good.
It's a 7-minute break, guys.
Wait,
Should be fine. 30 minutes after that?
I think 10 is fine.
Okay. All right.
Was I not good?